The Discovery, the mining laser, cut through the asteroid's surface like a hot knife through butter, sending chunks of rock spinning into the void. Captain Alina Vasquez watched from the bridge of the Prosperity, her weathered hands gripping the command rail as her crew worked to extract precious metals from the floating mountain of stone. "Captain, we're getting some strange readings from Sector 7, called out Dr. Marcus Chen, the ship's archaeologist and xenobiologist. His voice carried an excitement that made Elena's spine tingle. After 15 years of mining dead rocks, anything strange was worth investigating. Elena moved to his station, her magnetic boots clicking against the metal deck. "What kind of strange, Doc?" Marcus pointed to his scanner display, where geometric patterns pulsed beneath layers of asteroid material. "These aren't natural formations. Look at these lines. They're too perfect, too organized, and the metal composition." He paused, running the scan again. "It's not like anything in our databases." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Elena's crew, 12 humans from different colonies, united by their need to make a living in the harsh depths of space, gathered around the display. They had been working the Kepler 442 asteroid belt for 3 months, finding just enough to keep their ship running and their bellies full. "Could be an old derelict," suggested Tommy Rodriguez, the ship's engineer. His young face showed the kind of hope that came from dreaming of a big score. "Maybe something from the Coalition Wars." Elena shook her head. "Wrong sector. The Coalition never made it this far out." She studied the readings more carefully. The object buried in the asteroid was massive, easily 10 times the size of their mining vessel. "How deep?" "About 2 kilometers down," Marcus replied. "But Captain, the energy readings are off the charts. Whatever this is, it's not completely dead." A chill ran through the bridge. In space, anything with power after being buried for unknown years was either very dangerous or very valuable. Sometimes both. Elena made her decision. "Prep the heavy excavation gear. We're going to dig this thing up." The next 6 hours passed in a blur of controlled explosions and careful excavation. The Prosperity's mining drones worked tirelessly, peeling away layers of rock and metal debris. As they dug deeper, the object's true size became apparent. It wasn't just big, it was colossal. "Dear God," whispered Sarah Kim, the ship's communications officer. "It's a ship. A massive ship." The hole that emerged from the asteroid was unlike anything in their databases. Smooth, angular, and covered in what looked like armor plating, it stretched for over 3 kilometers. Strange symbols were etched into its surface. Not alien, but not from any human culture, Elena recognized. "Doc, tell me you're recording all of this," Elena said, her voice tight with anticipation. Marcus nodded, his hands flying over his controls. "Every second. But Captain, I'm getting massive power spikes from inside that thing. Whatever it is, it's waking up." As if responding to his words, lights began to flicker along the buried ship's hull. Then, with a sound that traveled through the asteroid's remaining mass, the ship began to move. Rock and debris fell away as the massive vessel slowly extracted itself from its ancient grave. The Prosperity shook as gravitational forces shifted around them. Elena grabbed her command chair, shouting orders to her crew. "All hands, secure stations. Emergency thrusters, get us clear." The ship continued to rise, shedding centuries of accumulated material. As it cleared the asteroid completely, Elena could see it in all its terrible glory. It was a dreadnought, a class of warship that existed only in historical records. But this one was different. bigger, deadlier. Captain Marcus said, his voice barely a whisper, "I'm reading human DNA markers in the ship's database. This is one of ours." Before Alina could respond, their communications array crackled to life. A voice spoke deep, artificial, but unmistakably human in origin. "Unknown vessel, you have awakened the dreadnought Titan's wrath. Identifying ... Human genetic markers confirmed. Welcome home, children of Earth." Alina felt her heart stop. Earth had been lost for over 500 years, destroyed in the Great Sundering when humanity was scattered across the galaxy. No human ship from that era should still exist, let alone be functional. "This is Captain Alina Vasquez of the mining vessel Prosperity," she replied, her voice steady despite the chaos. In her mind, "Identify yourself. I am Atlas, Advanced Tactical Learning and Strategic System. I have been dormant for 487 years, 3 months, and 14 days. You are the first humans I have encountered since the Exodus." The Exodus. Alina knew that term from her history lessons. It was what the survivors called the desperate flight from Earth when the home world became uninhabitable. But according to all records, the evacuation fleet had been destroyed by alien forces. "Atlas, what happened to Earth? What happened to the fleet?" There was a pause that seemed to stretch forever. "The fleet was scattered, not destroyed. Some escaped to distant colonies. Others ... Double quotes, the AI's voice took on a darker tone. "Others were hunted down by the hegemony. But the Titan's wrath was hidden, waiting for the day when humanity would need her again." Alina's mind raced. The hegemony was a coalition of alien species that had dominated this sector of space for centuries. They tolerated human colonies as long as they remained small and submissive. But a ship like this ... Captain, Tommy called out from his station. "I'm reading multiple contacts on long-range sensors. Big ones. They're heading straight for us." Alina cursed under her breath. The power signature from the Titan's wrath would have been visible across half the system. Of course, someone would come to investigate. "ATLAS, are you combat ready?" "Affirmative, Captain. All weapon systems are online. Defensive shields at full power. But I require a command authorization from a ranking human officer." Alina looked. Around her bridge at her crew, miners, not soldiers. They were good people, but they weren't prepared for what was coming. "What's the authorization code?" "There is no code, Captain. Command transfer requires a genetic scan and psychological evaluation. You must place your hand on the command interface and accept full responsibility for this vessel and its actions." Through the view screen, Alina could see the approaching ships. They were hegemony vessels, sleek, predatory craft designed for war. There were at least 20 of them, and more were coming. "Captain," Sarah said, her voice tight with fear, "they're broadcasting a surrender demand. They want us to power down and prepare to be boarded." Alina looked at the Titan's wrath floating beside them, its massive bulk dwarfing their little mining ship. This was a weapon from humanity's past, a reminder of what they had once been capable of. But it was also a choice: accept power and all the responsibility that came with it, or remain small and helpless. "Doc, what do you think?" she asked Marcus. The archaeologist looked up from his readings, his face pale but determined. "The energy readings from that ship, Captain ... It's not just a weapon, it's a mobile fortress. If even half the systems are functional, it could take on an entire fleet." Alina nodded slowly. Around her, the crew waited for her decision. They trusted her, had followed her through years of dangerous mining operations in hostile space. Now she had to decide not just their fate, but potentially the fate of every human in the sector. Atlas, if I accept command, what happens to my crew? They will be integrated into the ship's complement, should they choose to accept. The Titan's Wrath was designed to operate with a human crew of 2,000. But her automated systems can compensate for smaller numbers. The hegemony ships were getting closer. Alina could see their weapon ports opening, preparing for battle. They wouldn't negotiate. They would simply take what they wanted and eliminate any witnesses. Alina walked to the command interface that had materialized on her bridge, a holographic panel that glowed with soft blue light. She looked back at her crew one last time. I won't order any of you to follow me into this, but I can't let them take us without a fight. I can't let them win. One by one, her crew nodded. Tommy was the first to speak. We've been with you this long, Captain. We're not stopping now. Alina smiled, feeling a surge of pride in her people. This was what made humans special, not their technology or their weapons, but their ability to stand together when everything seemed hopeless. She placed her hand on the interface. The scan was instant and thorough. Alina felt the AI probing her mind, evaluating her character, her motivations, her capacity for command. It was invasive, but not unpleasant, like having a conversation with someone who understood her completely. Command authorization accepted. Atlas announced, "Welcome aboard, Captain Vasquez. Initiating power transfer to the Prosperity. Your crew will be brought aboard immediately." Alina felt the ship around her change. The Prosperity was being absorbed into the larger vessel, her crew protected by energy fields as they were transported to the massive dreadnought. Within minutes, she found herself standing on a bridge that belonged in a museum or a nightmare. The command center of the Titan's Wrath was vast, designed for a much larger crew. Holographic displays showed the approaching hegemony fleet in perfect detail. Alina could see their formation, their weapon loadouts, their probable attack patterns. It was like having godlike awareness of the battlefield. Asterisk. Alina felt the ship around her change. The Prosperity was being absorbed into the larger vessel, her crew protected by energy fields as they were transported to the massive dreadnought. Within minutes, she found herself standing on a bridge that belonged in a museum or a nightmare. The command center of the Titan's Wrath was vast, designed for a much larger crew. Holographic displays showed the approaching hegemony fleet in perfect detail. Alina could see their formation, their weapon loadouts, their probable attack patterns. It was like having godlike awareness of the battlefield. "Captain," came a voice. From behind her, she turned to see her crew emerging from transport alcoves, their faces filled with awe and terror. "This place is incredible." Alina nodded, taking her place in the captain's chair. It was larger than anything on their mining ship, designed for someone who commanded not just a vessel, but a fleet. As she settled into it, displays came alive around her, showing the ship's capabilities. The Titan's Wrath was armed with weapons that had no names in modern databases. Planet cracker missiles, quantum disruptors, gravity wells that could tear apart space itself. This wasn't just a ship, it was a weapon of mass destruction. ATLAS, show me what we're facing. The display shifted, showing the hegemony fleet in tactical formation. Alina counted 47 ships, including 3 heavy cruisers and what looked like a battle station. Against any normal human vessel, it would be overwhelming. But the Titan's Wrath was not normal. "Captain," Atlas said, "the hegemony fleet is demanding our surrender." They are offering to spare the lives of your crew in exchange for the ship. Alina laughed, a sound that echoed in the vast command center. Tell them we decline their generous offer. Message sent, Captain. The fleet is powering weapons. Alina looked round at her crew. They were scared but determined, ready to follow her into whatever came next. She thought about all the human colonies scattered across the galaxy, living in fear of the hegemony. This ship could change that. This ship could give humanity back its teeth. Atlas, target the lead cruiser. Show them what a real human warship can do. The first shot lit up space like a newborn star. Asterisk, the reckoning, the lead hegemony cruiser simply ceased to exist. Where moments before, a kilometer-long warship had been preparing to fire, now there was only expanding plasma and debris. The Titans. Wrath had fired a single shot from its primary weapon array, and the result was devastation beyond imagination. Alina watched the tactical display as the remaining hegemony ships scattered in panic. Their formation broke apart as captains tried to understand what they were facing. She could hear their panicked communications through the ship's advanced sensors. Unknown human vessel, you have committed an act of war against the hegemony. Came a transmission from the fleet commander. Surrender now or face total annihilation. Alina looked at her crew, spread across the massive command center. They were working frantically to understand the ship's systems. But even with Atlas's help, it would take time to fully master this ancient weapon. She hoped they had enough time. Atlas, what's our tactical situation? The AI's response was immediate and comprehensive. The remaining 46 vessels are regrouping at maximum engagement range. They are calling for reinforcements from the hegemony garrison at Proxima Station. Estimated arrival time, 4 hours, 37 minutes. Alina felt her stomach drop. Proxima Station was a major hegemony stronghold, home to over 200 warships. Even the Titan's Wrath couldn't face those odds. How long until we can jump to hyperspace? The quantum drive is charging. Estimated time to full power, 6 hours, 12 minutes. Alina cursed under her breath. They were trapped, outnumbered, and facing an enemy that would show no mercy. But as she looked around at her crew, she saw something that gave her hope. They weren't giving up. Tommy was working with the ship's engineers to optimize power distribution. Sarah was coordinating with the communications array to monitor enemy transmissions. Marcus was analyzing the ship's databases, looking for tactical advantages. This was what made humans special. When faced with impossible odds, they didn't surrender. They adapted. They fought. They found a way. Captain, Marcus called out from his station, I've been analyzing the ship's historical records. The Titan's Wrath was the flagship of the human defense. Forced during the Great War, it single-handedly held off the hegemony advance at the Battle of Rigel. Alina nodded, feeling the weight of history around her. What else do the records say? The ship was designed for asymmetric warfare. It's not just a dreadnought, it's a force multiplier. It can manufacture its own fighters, deploy autonomous battle platforms, and coordinate attacks across multiple star systems. Alina felt a spark of hope. Show me. The display shifted, showing the ship's manufacturing capabilities. Deep in its hull, automated factories were already coming online, building fighters and drones using raw materials from the asteroid belt. It would take hours to build a full complement, but every minute brought them closer to evening the odds. Atlas, begin manufacturing all available fighter craft. Priority on long-range interceptors and heavy bombers. Acknowledged, Captain. Production. Initiated. Estimated time to first deployment: 47 minutes. Alina turned to her crew. We're not just fighting for our lives here. We're fighting for every human colony in the sector. If we can prove that humans aren't helpless, that we can fight back, it might inspire others to stand up. The ship shuddered as the hegemony fleet opened fire. Their weapons were powerful, but at this range, they were largely ineffective against the Titan's Wrath's shields. Still, Alina could see the energy readings dropping with each hit. Return fire, she ordered. Target their heavy units first. The ship's secondary weapons came online, sending streams of energy across space. Each shot was precisely aimed, taking advantage of the ship's superior targeting systems. 2 more hegemony vessels exploded in brilliant flashes of light, but the enemy wasn't helpless. They began to coordinate their attacks, focusing their fire on specific sections of the ship's shields. Alina watched as the defensive fields flickered and weakened under the sustained assault. "Captain," Tommy called out, "I'm reading massive power spikes from the enemy fleet. They're charging some kind of super weapon." Alina looked at the tactical display. The hegemony ships had formed a perfect circle, their weapons pointing inward at the Titan's Wrath. Energy was building between them, creating a web of destruction that would soon focus on a single point. Atlas analysis. The enemy is preparing a concentrated gravitic pulse. If successful, it will bypass our shields and tear the ship apart from the inside. Time to firing: 3 minutes, 42 seconds. Alina felt her hands clench on the command chair. They needed more time, but time was the one thing they didn't have. Unless... Atlas, what's the status on the quantum drive? Charging at optimal rate. Current level, 67%. Alina made a decision that would have been impossible on her mining ship. Redirect all power from non-essential systems to the quantum drive. Include life support reserves. "Captain," Sarah protested, "that will leave us with only emergency life support. If something goes wrong, then we die fighting instead of being slowly strangled." Alina replied. "Do it." The ship's lights dimmed as power was redirected. Alina could feel the air getting thinner, the temperature dropping. But on the display, she could see the quantum drive charging faster. New estimate: 4 hours, 15 minutes to full charge. It still wasn't enough. The hegemony super weapon would fire in less than 3 minutes, and the reinforcements would arrive long before they could escape. Alina needed another option. "Marcus, what else can you tell me about this ship's capabilities?" The archaeologist was scanning through files as fast as the computer could display them. "There's something here. About an emergency protocol. Codename: Resurrection. It's locked behind multiple security barriers." Alina felt a chill that had nothing to do with the dropping temperature. "What kind of protocol?" "I can't access the full file, but it involves using the ship's quantum core to create a temporal distortion field. It's marked as extremely dangerous." Alina looked at the countdown timers showing the enemy weapons charging progress. 2 minutes, 18 seconds. "ATLAS, can you access the Resurrection Protocol?" "Negative, Captain. That protocol requires authorization from Fleet Command or a direct order from the Colonial Defense Council." Alina laughed bitterly. Fleet Command had been destroyed 500 years ago, and the Colonial Defense Council was a myth. But then she remembered something Marcus had mentioned earlier. "Atlas, you said I had genetic markers that matched your crew database. What was my clearance level? Accessing, Captain Alina Vasquez, Your genetic profile matches that of Admiral Elena Vasquez, Commander of the Third Fleet. Your clearance level is Alpha 1. Elena felt her world tilt. Admiral Elena Vasquez was a legend, one of the greatest human commanders in history. She had died defending the evacuation fleet from Earth, but apparently she had also had descendants who carried her name and her genes. Atlas, I'm ordering you to activate the Resurrection Protocol. Authorization, Admiral Elena Vasquez, Alpha 1 clearance. Accessing, ... Captain Elena Vasquez, your genetic profile matches that of Admiral Elena Vasquez, Commander of the Third Fleet. Your clearance level is Alpha 1. Elena felt her world tilt. Admiral Elena Vasquez was a legend, one of the greatest human commanders in history. She had died defending the evacuation fleet from Earth, but apparently she had also had descendants who carried her name and her genes. Atlas, I'm ordering you to activate the Resurrection Protocol. Authorization, Admiral Elena Vasquez, Alpha 1 clearance. Authorization accepted. Warning, the Resurrection Protocol has never been tested in combat conditions. Success probability is estimated at 67%. Failure could result in total ship destruction. Elena looked at her crew. They were all staring at her, waiting for her decision. Outside, the hegemony weapon was nearly ready to fire. Do it. The ship's quantum core began to spin faster, its resonance changing to a frequency that made Elena's teeth ache around them. Space itself began to warp and twist. The stars outside the view screen stretched and blurred as reality bent around the Titan's wrath. Temporal distortion field activated, Atlas announced. We are now operating in accelerated time. External. Temporal rate, 1 to 100. Elena felt her heart race as she realized what this meant. For every second that passed inside the ship, nearly 2 minutes would pass outside. The hegemony weapon would fire, but to them, it would seem to take hours. ATL-AS, can we maintain this field? Negative, Captain. Maximum safe duration is 12 minutes ship time, or 20 hours external time. Beyond that, the quantum core will suffer catastrophic failure. Elena nodded. 20 hours was more than enough time for the quantum drive to charge and for the ship's manufacturing systems to build a full complement of fighters. But it was also more than enough time for massive hegemony reinforcements to arrive. Captain, Tommy called out, his voice distorted by the temporal field. The manufacturing bays are working at incredible speed. We'll have 200 fighters ready in 6 minutes. Elena smiled grimly. And the quantum drive? 15 minutes to full charge. Perfect. Elena watched the tactical display as the hegemony weapon finally fired. The energy beam moved toward them with agonizing slowness, taking what felt like hours to cross the distance. When it finally reached the Titan's wrath, it simply passed through the temporal distortion field without effect. The enemy fleet was frozen in space, their ships barely moving as they tried to understand what had happened. Elena could see them firing message after message, but from their perspective, the signals were taking forever to reach their targets. ATLAS. What's happening at Proxima Station? Long-range sensors show massive fleet movements. The hegemony is deploying their entire battle group. Estimated strength, 347 vessels, including 4 dreadnoughts. Elena felt her blood run cold. Even with the Titan's wrath's power, those were impossible odds. But then she remembered something from her history lessons. The Battle of Rigel hadn't been won by superior firepower. It had been won by superior strategy. ATLAS, Show me the layout of this star system. Every planet, every station, every asteroid. The display shifted, showing the complete tactical situation. Alina studied it carefully, her mind racing through possibilities. The hegemony fleet would arrive in overwhelming force, but they would also be confident. They wouldn't expect a single human ship to be capable of serious resistance. Marcus, what else can you tell me about the ship's manufacturing capabilities? It's not just fighters, Captain. The ship can build autonomous mining platforms, construction, drones, even small warships. Given enough time and raw materials, it could build an entire fleet. Alina felt a plan forming in her mind. It was dangerous, probably suicidal, but it was also the kind of audacious strategy that humans were famous for. Atlas, I want you to deploy every available construction drone to the asteroid belt. Have them begin building a network of defensive platforms. Use the asteroids themselves as raw materials. Acknowledged, Captain. Drone deployment initiated. Estimated construction time: 14 hours external time. The temporal distortion field was giving them the time they needed, but it was also a double-edged sword. Every second they spent in accelerated time brought them closer to quantum core failure. Alina had to time everything perfectly. Status on the fighter production: first squadron ready for deployment. Total complement will be available in 4 minutes. Alina nodded. Launch all fighters as soon as they're ready. I want them positioned throughout the system, hidden in asteroid fields and behind planetary bodies. When the hegemony fleet arrives, I want them to think they're facing a single ship. As the fighters launched, Alina felt a surge of pride. Each one was a masterpiece of human engineering, faster and more maneuverable than anything in the hegemony fleet. More importantly, each one was piloted by an AI that had been trained on centuries of human tactical doctrine. Captain, Sarah called out, I'm monitoring hegemony communications. They're bringing everything they have. This isn't just a military response, it's a statement. They want to make sure no human ever challenges them again. Alina smiled coldly. Then let's make sure they get a statement they'll never forget. The temporal distortion field flickered and began to fade. Alina felt the ship returning to normal time, the universe snapping back into focus around them. The hegemony fleet was still there, still trapped in their formation, but now the Titan's wrath was ready for them. Atlas, status report. All systems operational. Fighter complement, 200 units deployed. Defensive platforms, 47 units constructed and positioned. Quantum drive, fully charged and ready for emergency jump. Alina looked at her crew. They had done the impossible, turning a desperate situation into a fighting chance. Now it was time to see if human ingenuity could triumph over superior numbers. Open a channel to the hegemony fleet. Channel open, Captain. Alina stood up. From her command chair, her voice carrying across space to the alien ships that had hunted humanity for centuries. This is Captain Alina Vasquez of the Human Defense, Force Vessel Titan's Wrath. You came here expecting to face a helpless mining ship. Instead, you face the descendants of those who built the greatest military force in galactic history. You want a war. You've got one. The response was immediate and predictable. The hegemony fleet opened fire with everything they had there, weapons lighting up space with deadly energy. But the Titan's wrath was no longer alone. As the alien vessels attacked, they found themselves surrounded by human fighters that struck from the shadows like avenging angels. The battle that followed would be remembered as the day humanity returned to the stars. Alina watched from her command chair as her fighters danced between the enemy ships, their weapons carving through alien hulls with precision and fury. The defensive platforms she had built throughout the system activated simultaneously, creating a crossfire that the hegemony fleet couldn't escape. But the aliens were not helpless. They fought back with desperation born of centuries of superiority, their weapons taking a toll on the human forces. Alina watched as fighter after fighter was destroyed, each loss a blow to her heart. "Captain," Tommy called out, "the Proxima Station fleet is jumping in. 347 vessels, just like Atlas predicted." Alina felt her resolve harden. "All fighters, return to the ship. We're going to show them what a real human dreadnought can do." The Titan's wrath turned toward the incoming fleet, its weapons charging for maximum power. Alina thought about all the human colonies scattered across the galaxy, all the people who had lived in fear for so long. Today, that fear would end. Atlas, target the enemy command ship. Full power. The ship's primary weapon fired, and space itself seemed to tear apart. The hegemony command vessel, a massive dreadnought that had terrorized human colonies for decades, was simply erased from existence. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. But Alina wasn't finished. As the enemy fleet tried to regroup, she ordered a full assault. The Titan's wrath moved through the battle like a force of nature, its weapons reaching out to touch ship after ship. Each hit was devastating, each explosion a declaration that humanity would no longer be victims. The battle raged for hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. When the last hegemony ship was destroyed, Alina stood in the command center of the Titan's wrath, surrounded by her crew and the ghosts of humanity's past. "Atlas, send a message to every human colony in the sector. Tell them the war is over. Tell them we're coming home." As the ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying the news of humanity's return to the stars, Alina smiled. They had been buried and forgotten, but they had risen again, and this time they would never be defeated. The galaxy would remember that humans were not victims. They were survivors. They were fighters. And they were back.